move on to discuss Manchester City defeating Ipswich Town 4-1 in their home opener. And it was actually Ipswich Town that got the lead early on in the game through Sammy Smodics. That's a hard name to pronounce, but it came in transition through the Irish player Smodic. I don't know how to pronounce that name. I'll just call him Sammy. But it came through transition player through Smodi, and he's able to get that opening goal for Ipswich Town. And you were thinking, really, we know what Ipswich Town, and by the way, that was the only shot on target, only shot of the game. And you're thinking, wow, 7th minute, Ipswich Town lead. This is the perfect start for Ipswich Town. Now they can sit in, they can play 11 players behind the ball, make it tight, close spaces, keep it compact, and just force it to be as difficult for Manchester City and sort of hold on for dear life. Because Manchester City, with the energy that you saw from the crowd, in the fact that this is their first home game of the season as defending champs, it was going to be electric, and Ipswich Town were really going to have to hang on. Let's be realistic. And then I would say it finished 4-1, and at the end it was a domination sort of game for Ipswich Town. But if it wasn't for this short stretch in the game, I think we could be having, I'm not saying Ipswich would have went on and, gotten a point or even won this sort of game if this stretch didn't happen. But I say the game would have been a little bit difficult. With this sort of stretch, it just completely changed the game, got the crowd into it, allowed Manchester City to gain confidence, while Ipswich Town fell apart. And it was two critical mistakes from Davis, Leif Davis, who kind of dangles a foot in, going up against Savinho's sort of direct nature, taking on a fullback. But it was Savinho was sort of in a position on the edge of the box, sort of going towards the byline. It was not a Leif Davis did not need to put a foot in. It was very unnecessary tackle, and it handed City an easy opportunity and a penalty kick with Erling Haaland to get back in the game. It's a critical mistake, and you can make it in that sort of moment. And once that mistake happens, then you allow Manchester City to gain a little bit of confidence. They get the goal, the crowd gets into it, and then and then it came the second big mistake, which came minutes later, it came 2 minutes later, actually, not even minutes later. It came 2 minutes later, and it's Arnjat Muric, who actually playing against, not really playing against his former team, because he never had an appearance for the first team, but playing against his former team. He came up the City youth ranks, and he was sent on loan a few times before being eventually sold to Burnley, in which he was sold to Ipswich Town a few years later. And then his first game back at the Etihad, he makes a critical mistake in terms of, I don't know what he was thinking, trying to sort of get past the player to, so he can, clear it, and he gets caught on the ball, and it leads straight into De Bruyne's pass, who's able to tap it into an empty net, 2-1. And then, the crowd is getting into it. This is their first game back since being Premier League champions. It's electric. Manchester City, they're gaining confidence. They're playing with energy, while Ipswich Town, their heads are dropping. They look brittle. They're on the verge of breaking. They're shattered. And then when Manchester City spell blood at the Etihad, they smell blood. And it led to a goal 2 minutes later. It was 1-0 Ipswich Town in the 11th minute. By the 16th minute, it was 3-1. Erling Haaland being able to get their second goal, sort of, being a little bit more direct. Manchester City was being able to play the ball in behind to Erling Haaland, who has that nature of just being an animal, a beast, as a center forward, making those runs in behind, sort of fighting for the scraps on long balls. He's able to sort of control it with his head, get past get past Muric and also tap it into an empty net to make it 3-1. And from then on, the game was really over, since when Erling Haaland was able to get that initial penalty, with City equalizing that early on, Ipswich Town was just not going to be able to handle the momentum and confidence the City gained. And that 2-minute stretch, in terms of that bad play from Leif Davis and that horrible mistake from Muric, that stretch was a horrible stretch, and just completely lost Ipswich Town the game. And we know there was one way that Ipswich Town, they were gonna have any sort of shot to get a result at Etihad, and that was to defend with their lives and try to nick one. Well, they were able to nick one early on, but they made two critical mistakes. One mistake from Leif Davis, and then one mistake from Muric. You can't make those sort of critical mistakes against Manchester City. It's a learning. It's a good lesson. It's a lesson learned for Ipswich Town. They played two of their more difficult games early on this season, playing against City away and then playing against Liverpool. Now they can sort of ease themselves into the season with some easier opposition. But it was a learning lesson for Ipswich Town. As far as Manchester City, job done. They took advantage of mistakes when they were provided with the opportunities. They went down in early and they showed they can respond. Their atmosphere was electric. You saw the celebration from the players as well when they were able to get those goals early on. You could see that, even though it's a game that Ipswich Town, they're expected to win, it means something to these players. They're really into it. Gundogan, he was on the bench. He was able to sort of make his debut after coming back to the club. And it's overall a great performance for Manchester City. We'll pick out, we know the players, we know, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Erling Haaland, Jeremy Doku. We know some of the players and the quality we have, but I would like to pick out Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis had a pretty good season, not last season, but the year before. He had a pretty good season, had a few runs in there. And then last season, he wasn't really as involved as much as we expected him. But now, so far coming into the season, had a very, very good season, Rico Lewis. There's some real ability in there in terms of midfield. He kind of had a howler, in my opinion. There was an open goal, and he smashed it across the bar. Not embarrassing by any means, but a goal that he definitely should have taken. It was a bad miss. But overall, he had a good game in terms of being able to control the ball in the midfield. That real ability. He has good close control, good touch. I will say the player that has caught me by surprise, because I haven't seen him play much at Girona, is Savinho for Manchester City. Sort of a right winger, and a good technical winger, but also very, very direct in being able to get at fullbacks and take them on. And it's like a similar player to the other side, Jeremy Doku, and similar player to like a Lamine Yamal or Nico Williams. Very, very direct, willing to take on players, and some real quality, real ability there. Good close control, good touch. Really, really impressed with Savio, and I like to see how Pep Guardiola continues to use him now with Phil Foden coming back. Is he gonna keep a spot in the team? Bernardo Silva, with his ability, I don't see Pep Guardiola gonna be benching him, especially him, his ability to cut on the left and being able to join into midfield and sort of control and dominate possession with his ability. I don't think Bernardo Silva is really. So I do think Savio, he's not going to be the starter game in, game out, but his directness, chasing a game, being able to bring a guy like him off the bench, being able to attack fullbacks one-on-one and put them in horrible positions, sort of put them on their back foot, and having to sort of guess which side Savio is going to take, whether he's going to go to the byline or cut into his left foot. And then once, if you do give him that little bit of space, that ability there to be able to pick out a ball or even to take a strike on his own, Salvio is a very, very, very good player. And it's another good find for Manchester City. And he's also a good player for Brazil now playing, because he's going to be able to play on that right-hand side, cutting into his left foot, which partners what you have with Vinicius playing on the left-hand side, cutting off to his right foot. And then, we know Endrick being 17-year-old, he's going to eventually, sort of take in the roles as that center forward for Brazil. I think they have the makings, Brazil, of a good front three there. And then you have players like Rafinha and Rodrigo off the bench. But Brazil sort of, the attack is, is getting molded. The issues there is defensively. But going back to Manchester City, overall quality win for Manchester City. Good start for them, and they have that Arsenal team behind them that are going to be chasing them all season. So you want to take advantage and get 3 points every game in, game out. That really is what it is for City and Arsenal this day and age in the Premier League. You blink once and the other team is going to jump over you. And maybe that's why we saw those sort of celebrations from Manchester City, because they know it's going to be a difficult task to keep Arsenal off their backs in this Premier League campaign.